Hey, what's up, you guys? Back again, episode 2 of the drive to Dayton. Got a good episode planned for you. Really looking forward to this one. Got some good feedback from last week's show. People, Ohio high school hoops, basketball junkies around the state, um, probably will listen to anything, but uh, they did listen to us last week. Hopefully, we provided some information and some entertainment along the way. I promise we will be better this week. We'll be 1% better this week than we were last week. Um, Gentlemen, how we doing? How's it going?
Going good. A little bit of a slower week for me, probably the first Tuesday that I've taken off in a while, getting ready for a weekend trip out to Northwest Ohio. So I think I'll see about 6 games this weekend.
Okay.
And then I went up to Akron on Saturday to watch the Ohio Bobcats, and unfortunately did not go our way. Just rough game for Ohio. But yep, cool story. The Enrique Freeman, who TJ, you would know what Cleveland Senate League school he played at.
He went to St. Martin de Porres.
Yeah, and so he was he a walk-on at Akron?
He was a walk-on originally, obviously now on scholarship. Yeah, he was a guy just kind of like a definition of a late bloomer. I mean, I think averaged like 8 points, 7 rebounds, something along those lines, as a senior in high school. I wasn't even familiar with who he was until he got to Akron. Yeah, now he's like one of the better mid-major bigs in the country.
Yeah, he gave Ohio 32 points, 15 rebounds on 14 of 18 from the field. So having a huge year, not just that game, but I believe that's a career high for him.
Those are Shaq Edey numbers.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, let's jump into this. I don't know if you guys got a chance to think about this or not, but I'll start with you, Mike. Who was your team of the week, or who was jumping out to you this past week?
When looking at the team of the week, I know Dayton Carroll recently got a good win over Chaminade Julian. That was a team that kind of jumped out to me. Sean McKittrick, pretty talented senior. For them, you're putting me on the spot here. I went to Hamilton against Middletown, and Hamilton got a impressive win. Senior guard Cooper Matthews been putting up big time scoring numbers in the GMC. And then also, I guess I'll shout out another team that I saw, Louisville. Junior wing guard Hayden Nigro had 41 points, set a school record with 19 made free throws. Louisville is averaging 94.5 points a game in their last 4 games. They had like 106 in a rivalry victory over Alliance, so they are putting the ball in the basket as well as anybody in the state. They got a pretty talented team. Went far last year in Division II, now making the move up to Division I. Going to be interesting to see how they fare in the tournament. They could be a little bit of a sleeper team because they don't play in one of the bigger conferences in Northeast Ohio, but they certainly have offensive talent. So those will be a couple teams I'm shouting out.
How about you, TJ?
Yeah, I liked that Mike brought up Louisville, a team that went to the regional finals last year, lost to St. V, who obviously ended up winning the state championship. I think Louisville, had they stayed Division II, would be very much so in the discussion in regards to, Division II teams, probably top 5, top 8 in the state, I would say, somewhere in that ballpark. So it's unfortunate that St. V moved up to Division I, right? Kind of opening the door for Louisville, and then they also joined them in Division I. So a bit unfortunate, but like I said, I think Mike hit the nail on the head. I think they're a team that can compete with anybody. A team I want to give a shout out to, team that hasn't won a whole lot over the last 10 years, Cincinnati Moeller. just kind of staying under the radar. But they, going into Saturday's game against Centerville, they had won 12 of their last 13 games. They had a really big win against St. X on Friday night. And then, unfortunately, sophomore forward Kingston Land rolled his ankle in that game, did not play Saturday against Centerville. But I think they kept it to, I think they lost by 5 points. So they were kind of playing from behind the entire game, but they did make a push late to kind of keep things a little interesting. So,
yeah, that's the beautiful thing about doing the show, guys, with these two, is I don't even have to say anything. TJ completely just took what I was going to say about Louisville not being in Division II. It's got to be one of those like, St. V bumps up to 1. There we go. We're going up there too. But you're both of you are exactly correct. That would be a team that would be a serious contender in the D2 ranks. It's kind of a shame that they got bumped up and they're in that bad spot where they're at the bottom of that Division I enrollment. But it's just kind of the way it goes. For me, there's two teams I wanted to shout out. First one, I believe that you recently saw these guys, TJ. Cincinnati Woodward.
Yep.
Currently 15-2. Had nice wins over Dunbar and Withrow last week. Rue Mills is a guy that stands out for them. They have a huge game this Friday against Taft in that CMAC. That's going to be that's a huge game. Taft won the first meeting, so I want to give those guys a shout out because they're currently 15-2 and kind of flying under the radar really because Taft gets a lot of the pub and rightfully so in that conference, but Woodward has been very strong, especially with the graduation of 4 p.m. They are still doing it well down there. And then the other team I wanted to mention is kind of a sentimental, I guess, a school I used to work at a lifetime ago, Harrison Central, over in Harrison County, in Caddis, if you will, picks up a big win.
I did not know it was pronounced like that.
Yeah, big win over previously undefeated Martins Ferry in the Buckeye 8 Championship. That was on a neutral floor at Bel Air. And then they bounce right back last night and go to East Liverpool and pick up another big win in those OVAC standings. East Liverpool was the top seed currently in the 4A, and Harrison went on the road and beat them by double digits. So shout out to Woodward, shout out to Harrison Central for great weeks, and look forward to see what those two teams do down the road. All right, how about player of the week, or just a player that have been standing out to you? TJ, I'll start with you on this one.
I'm going to go with the player you just mentioned, in Rue Mills out of Woodward. When I tell you he is one of the elite athletes, not only in Southwest Ohio, but in the entire state. And his motor is nonstop. It was just so fun to watch this guy flat out compete. I mean, he'll go coast to coast, Euro step, finish, and then he's the first guy sprinting back on the other end to challenge a shot. He was just nonstop. And I think it's equally as impressive because he's not the greatest shooter. And I think a lot of people are aware of this, but yet no one can stop him from doing what he wants to do. So he's just an incredible athlete, gets really low on the drive, can turn a corner, and he's a talented finisher and a kid who is just fun to watch. I feel like in today's game, when it's kids who just flat out compete are few and far between, he's a guy that you know exactly what you're going to get night in and night out.
Mike?
I am going to go with Charlie Russell. Bishop Reedy, undefeated. He led the way with 25 points as they stayed unbeaten at a neutral court win at the Smithville event over Berlin Highland. He's a baseball commit to Air Force, but he's been getting the job done all season on the hardwood. I really like showing love to kids that are getting it done, even in what isn't their main sport. I think all three of us are big proponents to kids playing multiple sports in high school. And I think Russell is the definition of a kid who's already committed D1 for baseball. He could have just sat out and not played basketball this year, but he wants to compete for a state title with a bunch of kids that he grew up playing with, and he's having a great year. Bishop Reedy still sitting undefeated, one of the best teams in Division II, so he's a kid that I wanted to shout out.
Yeah, people that I have talked to that have seen Reedy just kind of rave about the way that they flow together. You can tell the guys have been playing together for a long time when you got that kind of chemistry. For me, this is kind of low-hanging fruit, but Austin Parks, future Ohio State Buckeye, had 45 points the other night. That is a single I believe he set the single season scoring record at St. Mary's Memorial. So huge honor there. St. Mary's currently 12-5, have won 8 straight games. So Parks is a guy that is really has been killing it all season. Official numbers, according to his coach, Dan Hegemeyer, is 21.6 points per game, 8 rebounds, 3.2 assists, nearly 3 blocks, shooting 72% from the field and 75% at the line, which is huge for a big man that is going to draw a lot of contact to shoot 75% at the line. So shout out to Austin Parks at St. Mary's Memorial, and then another guy up in that area or up in the Northwest, maybe more northern Ohio, Logan Beeston at Tiffin Columbian. He had 32 points the other night, which gave him the all-time scoring record at Tiffin Columbia. So shout out to those two guys. I believe those are both Ohio Buckets guys.
Yep.
Great program, really on the rise. So everybody we mentioned, I mean, there's so many guys you can mention in this. And one thing that I like about Mike and TJ is, like, and one thing I wanted to bring them on for is, like, you can get caught up talking about the same 4 or 5 teams, the same 2 or 3 players, but there's so much good basketball, like, if you just take it for what it is out there, and kids that are doing great things, and guys you're never going to see at the state tournament, but are having phenomenal seasons, and we want to make sure that those guys get covered. All right, so one thing, my lights are going off here.
I love the timer, man. I know that you're still at school, so.
Oh, when you're at school, man, the light timers are going off, and then you're tripping over cords and stuff.
The worst is when you're in the bathroom.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, so a question that I propose to you guys now that lights are back on. This is interesting because there's so many ways to look at this. You have coaches that can do a lot with a lot, which is a craft in itself. I always said there's different problems at different levels. When you're coaching high-end kids, there's going to be different problems than there are coaching guys that maybe not be as talented. Managing egos, managing parents, managing people that are involved with the player, whether it's travel ball, trainers, all that things that some schools don't have to deal with that. They just, kind of coach ball. But I wanted to look at this week, just some guys that maybe you thought off the top of your head, coaches that do the most with the least.
Being a Stark County guy, the first person that comes to mind is Tom McBride over at Uniontown Lake.
Oh, that's a good one.
Regardless of how many seniors they lose, who they bring back, they're always one of those teams that happens to overachieve in the Federal League. They'll get picked to finish 6th and finish 4th. They'll get picked to finish 4th and finish 2nd. They get picked to finish 3rd, and they win a share of the league. So right now, the Federal League is about as competitive as I think it's been in the last few years. I believe everyone has 2 games left, and right now we're sitting at a 3-way tie with Glen Oak, Green, Jackson, McKinley, Lake, kind of right in the mix. But yeah, I would just have to get a quick shout out to my guy, Coach McBride. Phenomenal guy. Seems like he's been at Lake for I can't even tell you how long. But yeah, he's a guy that no matter who they have, what they got, they win games. And I think his culture speaks for itself.
TJ, is Lee Foster now the voice of Stark County basketball?
So Lee teamed up with Sammy, and they started something called Stark Media, which I think is another cool outlet for Stark County basketball. They do a lot of Federal League stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, they provide live streams, stats, standings, things of that nature. So yeah, shout out to my guy. I had no idea you knew Lee. That's my guy.
Hey, former Glen Oak Eagle, man.
Yeah.
Much better player than what he looks like now.
Yeah, Lee is a guy, and I make fun of him for this all the time. Lee had one move, and it was this little hezzy thing that he would do right to the street. He'd come down, and you know he's not going to drive it, but it worked for him. It worked for him almost every time. So yeah, shout out to Lee.
Not to hijack the show, but just a quick tidbit. Lee's dad is a St. Clairsville graduate. So small world, man. Small world. Mike, how about you? You see a lot of ball, all over the state. What are you thinking here?
Yes. So I am. Stubbs is gonna laugh. I'm gonna go with current Chesapeake head coach Stephen. I think it's pronounced Ader.
Oh yeah.
He used to be at Wheelersburg, which is who I watched him coach a couple times with. And his teams were always tough, disciplined. Didn't matter that every kid on the team was trying to play football in college instead of basketball. He still had those kids going out, ready to compete. They were year in and year out one of the best teams in Southeast Ohio. Just recently rejoined his alma mater to coach at Chesapeake. So he's a guy that I want to shout out because I just have so much respect for what he built at Wheelersburg. And I think it probably won't be very long until he has Chesapeake near the top of the conference as well.
That's a really good one. Yeah, his Wheelersburg teams, man. Talk about some teams that advanced in the tournament where you're just kind of like, what?
Yep. Every year, you'd be like, wow, they're deep again. It just didn't matter. They almost I think the definition of his team. They played Worthington Christian. The year that they lost in the state title game, and they were up 6 or 8 points with 2 minutes to go. Yes. Didn't find a way to hold on, but that just showed the grittiness and toughness. And I don't think a single kid from that team played college basketball. I think he had 3 or 4 college football players. Actually, maybe Carter McCorkle, who went to Marietta, might have been on that team, but still, just did a great job, year in and year out, success.
Well, I listed several guys, and I think all these guys are worth mentioning. And I don't know, if I started going down a list of, I think I started with the right intention of guys that do the most with the least, and then I think it, got into, guys that I just like. But one of the guys that always comes to mind when I think about this is Jeff Quackenbush at Newark. Yeah. And I don't want to sit here and act like he doesn't have guys that can play basketball. But when you compare the guys he puts on the floor to the teams that he has to compete against to win districts and get into the regional, it really is amazing what he can do at Newark. I mean, he plays in the same conference with Pick Central. And, Pick Central lost 2 games last year. Newark was one of them. And they were just okay. This year, same thing. Central goes down there, blows Newark out on Newark's home floor, come up here, and Newark almost beats them the other night with far less talent on the court. I think he just does a phenomenal job. And, when you gave him a guy like Greg Avery back in 2008, he won the state championship with him. I thought they were really good the year they had B.J. Dooling. But there was Central, was so good that year with Manley and Jeremiah Francis and those guys. And Pick North was great with Jerome Hunter. It was just a bad year to be great. But I think he does a phenomenal job. I think Mark Kinsley at Green does a good job. Matt Rooks down at Wyoming. Tom Siegfried, you guys mentioned, Louisville. Doug Fisher at Sheridan, I think he does a good job. Underrated. Blaine Maddox at Vincent Warren, really good job. Chad Bird at Wauseon. Scott Elchert at Jackson Center. Ryan Stetscholde at Kalida. Jamie Young at Cary. Nathan Speed at Fairland. I think
Speed was near the top of my list.
I think he does a great job. Chad Kaiser at LeBray. Brian West at Norwayne is doing a really good job. Corey Copas down at Georgetown. This is a guy that I think does a phenomenal job. Taylor Eisman at Lucas. Ed Andes at Shadyside. Mark Schlaball, for crying out loud, how he got that team to the state tournament last year. I mean, they should have built a statue in Berlin of that guy for that team he got there last year. No offense, but the fact that he got that team there last year, they should have gave them some kind of different trophy for getting that team to the state last year. There was no Seeger Bonifants. There was no Dylan Kaufmans. That was just all kids buying in and him doing his thing on the sideline. And them Schlaballs, they might get after the officials a little bit, but they can coach. Joe Dunleavy at Indian Creek and Howie Caldwell at Trimble. Those are guys I wanted to just mention because, some of those guys you're never going to see at the state tournament with their team, but they can coach ball. They can coach the guys that come through their doors. So I appreciate you guys mentioning the guys you did. Real quickly, this show last week told you that there was a chance Maysville was going to lose to Tri-Valley. They did. I don't know if anybody said anything about Strongsville beating Holy Name, but Holy Name kicked the bucket. I thought we told you that Defiance would beat Liberty Benton.
Defiance was almost my team of the week.
That was a rear end kicking.
Defiance has been really impressive this year.
Let's see who else here. Martins Ferry lost. Ashland Crestview got scorched pretty good by Lucas. So that leaves us with 5: Eds, Reedy, Cuyahoga Heights, Richmond Heights, and Fairfield. So I want to run through this quickly here. We'll go through buy or sell. This one kind of pains me to even say this. Buy or sell, Northeast Ohio will sweep all 4 state championships just like they did in 2017.
So.
Yeah, you have to sell because as favored as they are in D4 and D3, there's just too many other teams that are strong in D1 and D2 from other regions of the state to predict a 4 state title sweep.
I think since I've been covering the state of Ohio, I believe that in Division I, this is the most parity that I've ever seen in a single season. I genuinely have no idea how the postseason is going to go. No clue. I was texting with Matt Gould earlier today, and he said the postseason is going to look like a Picasso painting. And that is the most Matt Gould thing that he has probably ever said.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I would probably have to sell, but I mean, definitely a chance.
There is absolutely a chance.
Southwest Ohio will not win a state championship for the first time since 2017.
So, I believe they get at least 1 and a possible 2. I would say Centerville and Dayton Chaminade Julian are 2 teams that are very heavily in the mix. And gun to my head, probably the 2 teams that I would pick to win state championships this year.
Yeah, you had me.
I would also take one of Centerville, Chaminade, Julian, Cincinnati, Taft, Fairfield, Elder, Moeller. I think one of them probably gets it.
So you guys are both selling on that.
Yep.
Okay. Buy or sell? Ohio needs a 5th division.
It's so funny that you brought that up. I was going to mention that when we were having the Louisville conversation. If you look at the gap between the biggest public school or the biggest school in Division I and the smallest school in Division I, it is absurd. Like, to me, there's in no way, shape, or form that a Louisville should be competing with the teams that are at the top level. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I would love to see a 5th division. I wouldn't even be opposed to what Pennsylvania does, which I think is awesome. So I could be wrong, but the gist that I got is they have 1A, AA, AAA, and then 4A, and then you can petition to move up. So if you're in 3A and you want to move up to 2A, you can move up, but you have to stay there for 2 years. And you can never move down. So if you're a 1A, you can never go 2A. If you're 2A, you can never go 3A. But you can go up, and you can continue to keep going up as long as it gets approved. That's how I believe Kennedy Catholic a few years ago was in 1A, and they're a tiny school in Hermitage, PA. But, that's when they had Oscar and, all those, and, Mattia and all those guys.
Tiny school with a big man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually like that system. I think it obviously makes it a little more difficult to track. I mean, there's a lot more movement, a lot more work that goes into it. But I think that idea is kind of fun because I think we have those conversations all the time of, hey, how would such and such fare if they were in D2 this year instead of D3 or, so on and so on. I think that kind of opens the gates. But I would love to see a 5th division here in Ohio.
I'm going to sell. I hear TJ's points, but I think maybe it would be easier if you just made Division I a little smaller, and then you added 20 teams to D2, 20 teams to D3, 20 teams to D4, and then all those teams that are on the border, if you're a border D1 or D2, then you drop to D2. If you're a border D2 or D3, you drop to D3. Same with border D3 and D4, you would just drop to D4. I think that would just be easy. I think no matter how many divisions you create, somebody's going to be upset that they got the short end of the stick. So yeah, I think keeping it at 4 state champions, but maybe because like TJ mentioned, the gap in Division I is huge. The gap between a mid-sized D4 and a mid-sized D3 school isn't all that big. So I think maybe adjusting where Division I is, and then in turn, you'd have to follow and adjust D2, D3, and D4 a little bit. But instead just adding a brand new division, I think that would be a potential way. Don't go overboard, I wouldn't say, with adding teams to new divisions. But I think a couple more in the smaller divisions makes sense because in football, there's a lot less Division I schools than there are in any other division.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that couldn't also be possible for basketball, because Division I has
football also has 6 divisions versus our
7 divisions.
They have 7 divisions versus our 4. So naturally, those divisions are going to be smaller since there's 3 more.
Yeah, but in football, Division I, each region only has 17 or 18 teams, where in Divisions 2 through 7, each region has anywhere between 25 and 30 teams. So that would be my idea. Just keep it at 4 divisions, but then maybe Division I only had. How many schools are there per division? Is it roughly 200?
Roughly 200, yeah.
Yeah, so then you could make Division I you can make it 140 schools, and then you could make Division 2, 3, and 4 220, and that wouldn't have a huge, I don't think, impact.
Yeah, I think what they need to get away from is the fact that everything has to be even, the 200, 200, 200, 200. I don't get that. I mean, somebody maybe smarter than me has a reason for that, but um, there is like a block of schools in Division One that have a huge enrollment. Um, down to like the Pick Central, Pick North, or in the that 660, 650 boys, which is, I mean, if you can't get 5 players in that amount, you're not doing something right. But when you get down in that 390, that's a whole different ball game than 1700. So I think that is, especially when you look at a lot of those teams down in that range, they're basically, typically like suburban public schools that, you know, I guess maybe they're playing for, like, for example, like Tri-Valley for so long was up in Division One in Central Ohio. Like, making it to a district would be winning a state. Dover has no business being in Division One. That's a Division Two school to me all day long. And where are they going to go in Division One? They haven't went anywhere. They end up usually getting beat. Like last year, I thought they were phenomenal. The kid that went to Mount Vernon Naz, I thought that team was, I thought that team was really good, and they got beat by a team, with a pretty average record early in the tournament last year. So it's just, Division One is just a whole different animal for some of those schools that are pretty good basketball teams, but not in the Centerville, St. X, Moeller, not in that category. Menor, places like that.
Tax bracket.
Yeah, different tax bracket.
And all of them are D2 in football.
Well, gentlemen,
some are even D3.
We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back to finish out the show with On the Spot and the Mailbag Questions. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Drive to Dayton, episode number 2, here with Mike Roth and TJ Petros, 2 of the most well-known statewide guys in Ohio, as knowledgeable as it gets. That's why we only bring the best on this show. We're going to close the show today with On the Spot, and then got some mailbag questions from actually several people, some good ones. So I'll hit you with these on the spots. All right. So first on the spot, best high school basketball atmosphere in Ohio, and can't be like UD Arena or Centos Center. Has to be like somebody's home court.
Oh man, I'm going to take the easy way out on this one. My personal favorite gym in Ohio, the Canton Memorial Fieldhouse. When that place is rocking, there is no better place in Ohio to watch a high school basketball game. I remember, being in high school, and we would go watch those Canton McKinley teams, the 0405 or 506. I mean, if you didn't get there an hour and a half early, I mean, you were sitting up behind the backboard. It was,
Yep.
I will never forget those days. That is far and away my favorite gym. And they just got a new, Jumbotron scoreboard set up. So it's really cool.
I'm gonna go with seeing a game at Lima Senior. There's just nothing like the fans in that Lima, Ottawa, general area. I feel like that's one of the few parts of the state that really just loves basketball. Like, that basketball is their number one sport there. And they travel so well. I'll never forget, I was at the University of Akron for their regional championship with St. Vincent St. Mary, and Lima Senior had 70% of the crowd in attendance. So that's one of my favorite spots. And then always grab some QPs after the game.
All right, you saying that made me think of a game that I saw. I believe this was, it might have been the 2019-2020 season, maybe. I think it was the year before COVID. So I was out in Northwest Ohio doing my kind of yearly trip when I go out there. and I went to a Finley. Oh, who was it? Finley Ottawa Glandorf game, and it was at Finley, and the game was at 4 p.m. on a Saturday. I'm thinking it's gonna be an empty gym. So I go there about maybe 20 minutes before the game starts. Oh my God. I had to walk, I'm not exaggerating. It was about a half a mile, it felt like, to get to the gym. When I walk into the gym, it was nuts. I think the Ottawa Glandorf fans drove about 40 or so minutes to Finley. And they packed the house. It was sold out all the way to the top. And then there are assigned seats. They're like season ticket holders, people who have the same exact seat in the same spot every single home game. My mind was blown. So thankfully, the AD at Finley was a great guy and a great host. He went and grabbed me a chair and put it right on the baseline because there was nowhere else for me to sit. Unbelievable. I think Northwest Ohio, especially in that area, has some of the most underrated basketball and some of the most loyal fans.
Yeah, it was like a 8 a.m. AAU game. Somebody grabbed you a folding chair.
It was nuts. And I will say this though, that Withrow Woodward game Friday night, that was a lot of fun. It felt
I went to the other one of that, and it was highly entertaining.
Yeah, it felt like I was a part of a music video. It was fun though.
Yeah, I think, at some places, a lot of it depends on how the team is doing that particular season. But there are some places where the community support is, crazy no matter what. City League, when them City League teams are good, boy, those gyms are wild, man. They love it. Love their basketball. Some great rivalries here in Columbus, Cincinnati. I'll tell you who has a huge fan base is Dayton Dunbar, especially when Peter Poulin was there. I went to a Bookdale game one night down there, Dunbar and Bookdale. I mean, place is just electric for Dunbar. It's like, they're like the Lakers down there, especially when they're good. And I think they're starting to trend back that way with Tony Dixon. But yeah, that's a crazy place. The Supreme Court at Ottawa Glandorf is nuts. That's a huge home court advantage. Pretty much any of those MAC schools, the Marion Locals, NWC, Convoy, Crestview, those schools all in that Lima, that area up there, just absolutely love basketball. On down 75 to Dayton. It's just they just love basketball in that area, that western side of the state and up into northwest Ohio.
Hey, this conversation kind of makes me think of a place. So I'd never been there. Still to this day, I've not seen a game. But I remember this was like mid to late 2000s, maybe 05, 06 in that ballpark when those Triway teams were really good.
Oh, the Pit.
Yeah, I heard the Pit is like one of the most unique and insane places. Whenever they're really good, it's like one of the best home court advantages in Ohio. I remember that conversation being thoroughly talked about when I was in high school.
Yeah, those Keith Snoddy teams back in the mid 2000s. He coached in the cowboy boots. You gotta love it. But Randy Montgomery, a guy I know you're familiar with, had a ton of success at Triway. He's really the one that kind of jump started that program. He really had some great teams, always at the top of the polls. For me, I just mentioned some teams that I know have great home court advantages. I don't know if you've ever, Old Winland Memorial Gymnasium in Zanesville was a crazy home court advantage, low ceiling. I'm kind of going back to the days when Zanesville was ranked in the top 25 in the country in the USA Today poll. I think they got as high as 2 maybe one year, 2 or 3. Cambridge was an unbelievable place to watch a game at their old gym when Gino Ford and Dustin Ford and those guys were playing. And my alma mater. Hey, it's my show. I can do whatever I want. No,
Clearly.
actually, it's our show. St. Clairsville, if you have never been to a game there, don't knock it until you try it. If it's a rival, which it seems like they have like 50 rivals, or just a big game in general, that place will be electric. Trust me. If you've never
How
been,
many football trophy games does St. Clairsville play a year?
quite a few, almost every week. As long as we got the coal bucket from Harrison Central, but no,
I've been to a cold bucket game
yeah, it's a
on the
great
gridiron.
it's a great place to play. The gym was built, I believe, in the 50s, so it's kind of unique. Wooden bleachers, but yeah, just a great place to play 10 games every year. When I was in high school, we were only playing 20, but
And great pizza down that way too.
Yep.
I think the Valley has. I don't know. I'm a big Valley pizza guy, man.
Yeah.
Like go to Zion.
I gotta try it. Next time I'm there, I have to try it. It's the cold toppings, right?
You got to go to Zontini's in Martins Ferry.
oh,
That's my personal spot. Holds a place in my heart. It's very very different than what you're accustomed to, but yeah.
yeah, that's you know, when I was playing, and even probably into the mid 2000s, there were still a lot of stages, like gymnasiums that we would play in that were on stages. So you'd have like, the
That was like
seating.
middle school days
Yeah,
for
like
me.
the seating on one side would be regular seating, and then it would be like people are out in the audience at like a play. Very, very strange atmosphere. Martins Ferry had one of those. But anyway, I digress. All right, so last on the spot question. What team do you think, or do you see appearing to be hitting their stride? Hitting that streak that every team that typically wins a state, especially in the divisions 2, 3, and 4. Do you see any team out there that's starting to hit that stride where they're shifting up from 4th to 5th gear? Maybe a team that's kind of lost some games early, but you kind of knew, like, all right, February, March, they're going to get it together, and
We
this
mentioned Moeller earlier, but with their injury, that's one. Maple Heights is on fire.
Yeah. I think
But,
they're on a 14-game winning streak in Maple Heights right now.
who's
yeah,
the
they
coach at
started
Maple
1 and
Heights?
4.
Who's the coach at Maple Heights?
Bink. So, yeah, shout out Coach Bink, man. Coach Anthony Burns doing a phenomenal job in his first year.
Shout out Chaz. Shout out Charles Wolf.
I would say it's tough for me to kind of put a finger on one specific team or teams, quite frankly, because I feel like everybody's just beating everybody. I can't even keep up. And if you were to take even just Northeast Ohio alone and just make like a spider web of who's beating who, and then this team matched up with this team and beat them by 20, and then played this team that lost to, like, it is insane. So yeah, I would say outside of Moeller, like we already mentioned, I think a team that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit in Division 2 is Akron Buchtel. I like their chances. They had a really big win over Ferndale not too long ago. Then they played Akron East for the second time, and I think ended up smoking them pretty good. So I would say Buchtel is a team that has a chance. Not that they weren't, ever looked at as a top team in Division 2, but I think they're kind of playing some of their best basketball. Coy Thurman has been phenomenal as of late. So
Minford, another team in D3 that's really starting to hit their stride. They're starting to blow some teams out, where in early of the year battles they were more competitive. So that's a team to keep an eye on that you'll probably see like an Afrocentric or Harvest Prep have to go through to make it to Dayton.
I was thinking of a team, Mike. I think you mentioned these guys last week. They lost their first game of the year to a really good team in Rushi, but I think they've won like 17 in a row now, or maybe 18, but I think it's 17. Jackson Center. Man, I haven't seen them in person. I haven't seen even a full game of a stream, but just the highlights that I've seen, you just get the feel about that team. Like, they're really good. Like, their guys are big.
Do you know if they go down south or if they're in Northwest?
I believe they go to Southwest.
Southwest.
Okay.
That Molenkamp kid, I think his name is Jace Molenkamp. I mean, that kid is a nice player. You know, they got Rushi back the second time around. Ended up, I think, beat them by maybe 13 or 14 in the second in the rematch. But that's a team that is always relevant in the tournament because of their style of play. But this team is playing a lot different. They are not playing games in the 30s this year because he's got guys that can put the ball in the basket, and that makes it's always been the key to the game, putting the ball in the basket. And they don't have to play those games in the 30s anymore. They can win games in the 50s and 60s, and they're a lot more exciting this year. And I know Coach Elchert could care less about being exciting. He's looking to win games, but they're a team I wanted to mention. All right, let's get to these mailbag questions, and then we'll get out of here on a Wednesday. I got AEW tonight. So make sure I've eaten dinner and I'm ready for that. But my man Tony Peters, I believe you guys both know Tony.
Yep.
He wanted to know who we thought were some. I don't even know if it's early because it's getting late. Candidates for Mr. Basketball, and I'll let you guys tell me what you think, and then I'll shout off a couple of stats here.
First few names that come to my head, I think George Washington III has to be in this conversation. I would say Gabe Cupps again, Devin Royal, who was probably my pick last year. I would say those are probably the first three names that come to my mind.
Great. Those are good. Yeah, great names.
I think Dalen Swain, Laurent Rice, L.A. Hayes, Colin White, Luke Skaljak, some like outside guys who maybe not in contention to win it, but like first team All-State guys will at least be in the discussion. Trying to think of others.
I wish that Mr. Basketball would be decided at the very end of the season.
I think that would have changed last year's outcome.
I never understood that, and I don't think I ever will. But it's a different conversation for a different day.
Because they don't award it till after the state title game, anyways.
Correct.
It'd be one thing if they like honored the kid like during the D4 state title game. You know what I mean? Then like it'd be like, well, we need the votes, but they don't do that.
Yeah. So the way that the Mr. Basketball, I believe, is set up, each region can only nominate one player. So whoever wins the region player of the year, I believe those are the names that get tossed into the pile. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think that, like we mentioned, the parity earlier, I think that kind of throws a wrench into this as well. I don't think there's a clear favorite. I don't.
Yeah, you guys, I had a list here, and I have no idea how I completely forgot OGW3 at Chaminade, but he's a great name to add to the list, and I didn't have Swain, Hayes, or Skaljak, and those are great names as well. You guys mentioned Royal. Laurent Rice is a dude that is having a year. Currently 24 points a game, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. They're 15-3. A couple close losses, and then the blowout loss to Centerville. But he's having a phenomenal year. Last year's winner, I don't know if you've even mentioned, last year's winner, Gabe Cupps. Probably, it's like one of those things where, like, you know, him and Power would kind of like split that, would probably split votes being on the same team. But definitely both guys worth mentioning. You guys mentioned, or one of you mentioned Colin White. I would also throw a couple other names in the mix. Austin Parks, I think, has to be in the mix at St. Mary's. I think Darren Peterson at CVCA has to be in the mix. It's amazing how good he is, but how little he's known outside of like the basketball junkies. With his talent level, and I just don't know how long we're going to have him here in the state, but he's a name that needs to be mentioned. Devin Royal, currently about 20 points a game, 7.5 boards, shooting about 42% from three, which is really, really good. And it's not like he's 4 for 10. I mean, he leads the team in 3-point makes. Markel Johnson, I think, is shooting around 45% from three. He's having.
I mentioned it on Twitter a few weeks ago, but I think Markel Johnson's kind of been a bit of an unsung hero for that team. I think he kind of stepped into that role that was, left available, from, you lose Sonny Styles, you lose, what was his name?
Josh Harlan.
Josh Harlan.
But, two really, really gritty guys who made a ton of winning plays, in the postseason. I think Markel Johnson is a kid who kind of slides right into that. And, yeah, he's been having a phenomenal year.
So a couple of things. Us three are just shooting names off of guys that are well-deserving. But here's some things to think about, Tony, to answer your question. There hasn't been a player outside of Division I or Division II to win this award since 2006. Wow. And that was O.J. Mayo. And he would have won it in 2007 had he not went back to Huntington. And the only other winners outside of Division I and II are Mayo won it in 2005 as well. LeBron in 2001 was in Division III. Jason Collier, former NBA player, 96. Aaron Hutchins played at Marquette. And Bob Patton, who played at Stanford. So those are the only guys to ever win it from Division III or IV. So Colin White, I think he is a legit.
Yeah, him and Swain.
I think both of those guys are legit candidates, but just the facts tell me otherwise. And then, when you look at what Cupps is trying to do, Cupps is trying to become the 7th player all time to win two Mr. Basketballs. Listen to this list. Jimmy Jackson, Greg Simpson, LeBron James, who is the only 3-time winner, O.J. Mayo, Jared Solinger, and Luke Kennard. That would put yourself in some pretty high class. I don't think Cupps is going to win it this year. I'm not saying he's not deserving. I just don't think he's going to win it. And I always look and go, all right, who's committed to Ohio State? And when you look at that, Devin Royal, Austin Parks, I think Mr. Basketball comes down to those two guys. I don't want to say George Washington is out of the race, committing to Michigan because Xavier Simpson won it going to Michigan. But I don't think there was any I don't think there was an Ohio State commit that year. I think that was 2016. So my guys that I think are really legitimately in the running would be Royal, Parks, and George Washington would be my 3. But everybody that you guys mentioned, phenomenal players, all worthy candidates. Also from the mailbag, and this is Brayton Martin wanted to know, and we'll narrow it down to this. Do you think within 5 years Ohio will have a shot clock?
Oh man, when I tell you I am, no offense, but I am so sick of this question and this debate. It's
two of us.
Yeah, it's like clockwork. All it takes is one low scoring game anywhere across the state, and it's just a wave of shot clock tweets and conversations. Quite frankly, I could care less if it happens or not. But within the next 5 years, I do believe that we will see a shot clock in Ohio. As my gut tells me, in 5 years we will have one.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be a positive, but I think it doesn't change as much as some of the shot clock opponents expect it to. So I'd be welcome to the change. But there's some teams it's going to affect a lot, and a lot of teams where it really won't affect them at all. Maybe you'll see some end of game situations that are a little better because of a shot clock. And you'll see the GCL South scores be a little higher at halftime, but other than that, not going to be all that much different. The other crazy thing was in that GCL game, in the LaSalle Elder game, they scored like 2 less points in the fourth quarter than they did in the first 3 quarters combined. They scored like 45 points in the first 3 quarters, and they scored 42 in the fourth quarter alone. So, I don't know.
I think whenever it does happen, there will be a major adjustment period that's going to take some time in terms of people who are running the clock, getting used to running the clock, the officials getting used to officiating with the clock. I think there's a lot of proponents that factor into it that not a lot of people really take into discussion when they're tweeting from their bedroom. So,
I mean, yeah, you got Bill who's running the clock just trying to get a free chicken sandwich. And now he's you're gonna have to train him on that. But I'm with you guys. Like I'm gonna be honest. If it comes, great. If it doesn't, great. I don't care. You're gonna have, on some teams you're gonna have bad basketball players taking quicker shots. Like whether you take it, 45 seconds or 10 seconds. Bad basketball players are bad basketball players. This isn't college, and this isn't the pros. And to be honest, I witnessed a game last night of guys that are on scholarship to play basketball with a shot clock, score 44 points in a 40-minute game. The Vanderbilt Commodores. You scored 44 points in a 40-minute game with a shot clock. 3 of 30 from 3-point range. I'm pretty sure that each one of us could punt in 3 of 30. So just because you have that clock doesn't mean you're going to score more points. Okay? And I know Eric Flannery right now, he's probably getting ready to text me. Paul Biancardi's got me on speed dial right now. Gentlemen, and Eric and I have talked about this. I told, kind of Eric, you're in the fantasy land, buddy, of high school basketball. You live in the 1%. He coaches at Eds. He coaches USA basketball. All right. He does not coach at Kinsman Badger or Ironton St. Joe's. Where the players don't know if it's
brutal shots.
I mean,
that Ironton St. Joe's was just sitting here peacefully, and they're just like, wow.
I mean, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And,
I've drove past the school.
And I love
St. Joe's.
Listen, I love Eric. I love Flannery. I think he's a fantastic basketball coach. I just think he's off on this. In the reasons behind. It's a lot easier to teach Kyrie Irving how to play within a shot clock than Kurt Stubbs at 16 years old. All right? So I still love you, Eric, even though we can agree to disagree on this. But if it comes, great. If it doesn't, great. I don't think any of us are going to stop attending either way.
No.
last couple here. Our guy Kyle, one of the greatest basketball. Kyle is just a fantastic sports fan.
Kyle is a psychotic.
He does not discriminate against any of the sports.
Love him. Kyle will go anywhere and everywhere to watch a game. There is no place that Kyle won't go.
Love that. Man, I love that dude. I love that. He wanted to know, just the thoughts on Martin's RPI in terms of for seeding, and if he thought like if there was any tweaks. And personally, I haven't like looked into the nuts and bolts of it as far as like the entire calculations. So I don't know exactly what would need tweaked. But what's your thoughts on, I think Northwest Ohio is doing it for seeding.
Me and TJ are laughing because we had a long text thread like a week ago about this, like a 25-minute back and forth argument.
Yeah, so me and Roth are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to Martin RPI. And I want to start this off by saying I think it's a phenomenal tool. Like, I can't even imagine the time that he puts into it. I think it's unbelievable. I think it is a great complementary tool, but to use it and it only solely for seeding, my gut doesn't agree with that. Just because according to, I believe it was last week's rankings. And this is no offense. I think these are two pretty good basketball teams, and they've both been having great years. But any system that has Avon Lake and Nordonia ahead of Centerville, in my opinion, needs some tweaking. And that's just, that's the nicest way I could possibly say it. I don't think it takes the smartest person in the world to realize that Centerville is, without a doubt, a top 3 team in the state.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah, me and TJ went back and forth with this. He compared his rankings to the football rankings, and a lot of the teams that he had ranked higher than the football computer rankings that OHSAA used did better in the playoffs. So like if there was like a 10 seed that he had ranked higher than a 7 seed, that 10 seed was more likely to win. So like I think his formula is really good. Like football also uses a pure computer algorithm, and they have forever. And football prevents teams from going to the playoffs. Like regardless of what your Martin RPI ranking is, you will still make the playoffs in basketball. There's no in or out. I understand some of the complaints. I agree with TJ that I think Centerville's better than Avon Lake and Nordonia. You'll hear no arguments from me there. But I think I used this to TJ as well. I think it's just as absurd that coaches would just be able to vote for their buddies really highly, because that just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Like if you're a school in like a conference that has if you're like a D3 school in a league with a bunch of D1 and D2 schools, and then you go to that D3 voting and you've only played like 2 schools, you're not going to get as much love because the people don't know you as well. Another reason why I think this could be good, if you go off of Martin RPI, you don't need to do the vote a week and a half before the regular season ends. You also could just push it back to the end of the regular season and have the coaches vote. But if you're purely going by Martin RPI, there's no need to seed the teams this Sunday. You could just wait to seed the teams at the end of the regular season, which I think is also possible even if you aren't just using Martin RPI, to wait for the end of the regular season. So that would be something that I would like to see, because
I think it's a happy medium somewhere between both me and Rob. And I think that's the sweet spot. I think combining the Martin RPI, the algorithm, the tools, with people who have seen these teams in person, live, right, with some sort of, I think there is a combination of factors that need to be in play. and not just one system that's the end all be all. And I agree. I don't like the coaches voting. I know here in Stark County, I get a lot of phone calls and text messages about, oh, such and such, and, you know, these 3, 4, they all, you know, voted against me, and, you know, they voted me 9th, and I beat them, and I mean, it's, so I do understand where Roth is coming from that standpoint as well, but yeah, there's got to be there's got to be something else factored in. I don't like going solely off of one thing, and regardless of what it is, whether it's Martin RPI, there has to be multiple voices, multiple things in the pot.
Stubbs, you probably know better than me on this, but I was covering Southeast Ohio football pretty heavy, and the one year that the football coaches got to vote, the COVID shortened season, there were some ridiculous individual ballots. There was a 5-0 Southeast Ohio team who was voted like 25th out of 29 teams in the region, and they ended up being like the 4th seed, even though they were unbeaten. And they were a Southeast Ohio team in a Southwest Ohio region. So that's just a prime example of just where coaches votes, like TJ mentioned, this guy voted against me and I beat him, blah blah blah. It's
yeah, that's I'm glad you guys addressed that. I think definitely something to think about moving forward. And you guys kind of answered Jeremy Bell's question, which, you know, his question was, what were some thoughts on waiting until closer to the end of the season for seeding teams? You guys kind of mentioned that. I think we talked about that last week where, like, you know, we're going to have the drawing this Sunday, and it's like some teams kind of just like, at that point, it's like, all right, you know, let's play out the string here and let's get on with the show. You know, let's get on to where it matters. But, you know, and then other places, you got the seeding, and then you got conference tournaments and things that matter right after that, which there's some big wins in those games that are on the line. So
that would change the seeding.
I mean, I'm definitely for pushing the seeding back. Like, I don't see how it harms anything. And I don't know what the race is to get the seeding done. I'd have to ask somebody in the know.
I would love just a more universal schedule across the state. There's no reason, like we mentioned.
So
this last
hold on, let me stop you there, and I'll finish your point. Greg Scaljak, that was just the question that he was going to ask. So I'm glad you're addressing this. Just kind of that uniform across the state, not this district's doing this district's doing that. You know, we're starting here, you're going to start there. And I think that's kind of what he's getting at. But
we'll have a team who is in the district final, and they have to wait a week for the rest of the state to get to the district final. You know, some of those teams in Southeast Ohio and Southwest Ohio, they already know who's playing in the district finals, while other teams are in the sectional finals. I don't understand it. And if I'm a team that's playing my best basketball, I don't want to sit for 7-8 days without a game.
Right.
And I don't think anybody wants that. I would just love for us to get some sort of universal schedule to where everyone starts on the same time and things are going at a normal pace. It's like 4 different tournaments that just so happen to meet up in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like 4 different paths to the same tunnel.
What I don't want to lose from this is like how Columbus does their D1 district finals on Saturday, and then Cincinnati does theirs on Sunday, because that's really nice for people like me and you, TJ, to knock them both out. So I think like having like here is a 3-day window where you can play like D1 sectional finals. Here's a 3-day window where you can play district semis, and then here's another 3-day window where you can play district finals. It doesn't have to all be on the exact same day, but as long as it's on the same general schedule, because like TJ mentions, the Southeast and Southwest Ohio teams, some of them are being eliminated from the playoffs 8 to 10 days before Northeast Ohio teams start the playoffs, which I think is pretty crazy. But also, what I don't want to have happen is have every D1 district final be Saturday at 7 p.m.
Yeah,
So then you can only go to one game. Because there are some things that are kind of nice about it being slightly different schedules. So that would just be my added, hey, it is nice that Cincinnati's D1 district finals are on Sunday and Columbus and Northeast Ohio's are on Saturday.
Well, we got a little less than a minute left, gentlemen. I don't want to not mention Ben Swinnerton wanted us to talk more Southwest Ohio. I think we did that this week, but here's the thing, Ben. We've been talking about Southwest Ohio for the past 4 months with the Cincinnati Bengals. All right? They're done. We'll start talking more Southwest Ohio. Heck, we talked Moeller for 5 straight years when you won 400 games in a row. All right? So, Ben, we'll get more Southwest Ohio in there if we didn't this week.
I went to a Hamilton-Middletown game on Friday. I mentioned that.
Exactly. For Mike Roth, TJ Petros, I'm Kurt Stubbs. We're out of here.